In 1921, a 14-year-old farm boy from Idaho stood before his high school science teacher drawing diagrams of an electronic device that could transmit moving pictures through the air. Philo Farnsworth had conceived the fundamental principles of electronic television while plowing his family's potato field, visualizing how electron beams could scan images line by line. His teenage genius would create the technology that transformed global communication and entertainment, yet powerful corporations spent decades stealing his invention, crushing him with patent litigation, and erasing his name from the history of the device he created. Philo Taylor Farnsworth was born in 1906 in a log cabin near Beaver, Utah, in a Mormon family that valued education despite their poverty. His family moved frequently, seeking better farming opportunities throughout the Intermountain West, living without electricity or modern conveniences. Young Philo demonstrated extraordinary mechanical aptitude, repairing farm equipment and building electric motors from discarded parts. He devoured science magazines that his father brought home, teaching himself advanced physics and electrical engineering through magazine articles and library books. By age 12, he had built an electric generator to provide power to his family's farm, astonishing neighbors who still used kerosene lamps. In 1921, Philo's family moved to a farm near Rigby, Idaho that had the luxury of electricity. The 15-year-old was thrilled to have electric power for experiments and lighting, spending hours studying electromagnetic theory. He became fascinated with the problem of television, the transmission of moving images that scientists and inventors had been attempting to solve for decades. Existing approaches used mechanical systems with rotating discs and mirrors, producing dim, flickering images of terrible quality. Philo recognized that mechanical television would never achieve the clarity and speed necessary for practical use. While plowing straight furrows in his family's potato field, Philo had a revelation that would change technological history. He realized that images could be captured and transmitted electronically by scanning them with a beam of electrons, just as a farmer plows a field in parallel rows. Each line of the image would be converted into electrical signals that could be transmitted and then reconstructed at the receiving end. This electronic approach would eliminate mechanical moving parts, allowing much faster scanning and higher image quality. At 14 years old, Philo Farnsworth had conceived the fundamental principle of modern television while guiding a horse-drawn plow. Philo approached his chemistry and physics teacher, Justin Tolman, with drawings of his electronic television system. Tolman was astounded that a teenage student had designed such a sophisticated device combining vacuum tube technology, electromagnetic fields, and image processing. The diagrams showed an image dissector tube that would capture images by scanning them with an electron beam, and a picture tube that would recreate the image at the receiving end. Tolman encouraged Philo to pursue his invention and preserved his drawings, documentation that would later prove crucial in patent disputes. These high school drawings represented the first blueprint of electronic television as we know it today. If you want to discover more young geniuses whose revolutionary inventions were stolen by powerful corporations that destroyed their lives, subscribe now and activate the notification bell so you never miss these heartbreaking stories of brilliance exploited and innovation stolen. Philo's family circumstances prevented him from immediately pursuing his television invention. His father died in 1924, forcing Philo to leave college after just 1 year to support his mother and siblings. He worked various jobs, including as a street sweeper and office boy, while continuing to refine his television design in his spare time. He married his sweetheart Elma Gardner in 1926, and she became his laboratory assistant and lifelong supporter. Despite poverty and lack of resources, Philo remained determined to build the television system he had conceived as a teenager. In 1926, Philo convinced a group of San Francisco investors to provide $6,000 to build a working television prototype. He was only 20 years old, with no college degree and no professional credentials, yet his passionate presentations and detailed technical knowledge persuaded businessmen to fund his research. He established a laboratory in San Francisco and began building the image dissector and other components of his electronic television system. His wife Elma worked beside him, helping to assemble vacuum tubes and electronic circuits in their makeshift laboratory. For the first time, Philo had the resources to transform his teenage vision into physical reality. On September 7, 1927, Philo Farnsworth successfully transmitted the first electronic television image in history. The image was a simple horizontal line, but it proved that electronic scanning worked exactly as he had calculated. The image dissector captured the line, converted it to electrical signals, transmitted it through wire, and the picture tube faithfully reproduced it. Within weeks, he was transmitting more complex images including dollar signs and photographs, demonstrating that electronic television could transmit any visual information. At age 21, Philo had accomplished what the world's leading scientists and engineers had failed to achieve. Philo filed patent applications for his television system in 1927 and received his first television patent in 1930. His patents covered the image dissector, the fundamental principles of electronic scanning, and numerous other crucial components. The patent documentation clearly established him as the inventor of electronic television, with his high school drawings providing evidence that he had conceived the technology years earlier. He demonstrated his television system to journalists and scientists, generating publicity and attracting attention from major electronics corporations. His success as a young inventor without institutional backing was remarkable and threatened established corporate research laboratories. The Radio Corporation of America, known as RCA, was the dominant force in American electronics, controlling most radio patents and manufacturing. RCA President David Sarnoff had proclaimed his ambition to bring television to America, investing millions in television research at RCA laboratories. RCA's chief engineer, Vladimir Zworykin, had been working on electronic television for years but had not achieved a working system. When RCA learned that a 21-year-old with no resources had beaten the corporate research team, they were outraged and determined to acquire or destroy his patents. Sarnoff visited Farnsworth's laboratory in 1931, examined his television system, and offered to buy his patents for $100,000. Farnsworth refused to sell his patents to RCA, wanting instead to license them and maintain control over his invention. This decision, though principled, proved financially disastrous and ultimately destroyed him. RCA launched a campaign to circumvent Farnsworth's patents by claiming their engineer Zworykin had invented television first. They filed patent interference claims arguing that Zworykin's earlier proposals predated Farnsworth's work. The resulting patent litigation consumed the next decade, draining Farnsworth's financial resources and preventing him from commercializing his invention. The patent interference trials became epic legal battles between a small inventor and the most powerful electronics corporation in America. RCA had unlimited legal resources and could afford to prolong litigation indefinitely. Farnsworth had to fund his legal defense from his limited resources while simultaneously trying to keep his research laboratory operating. The crucial evidence was Justin Tolman's testimony about Farnsworth's high school drawings from 1921, proving he had conceived electronic television before Zworykin. In 1935, the Patent Office ruled in Farnsworth's favor, confirming him as the inventor of television. Despite winning the patent interference, Farnsworth could not overcome RCA's market power and financial advantages. RCA controlled radio broadcasting networks, manufacturing facilities, and distribution channels necessary to commercialize television. They continued to challenge Farnsworth's patents through additional litigation while developing their own television system based on principles similar to his. RCA introduced television at the New York World's Fair in 1939, promoting it as an RCA innovation without mentioning Farnsworth. The public began to believe that RCA had invented television, exactly as the corporation intended. Farnsworth struggled financially throughout the 1930s despite holding the fundamental television patents. He moved his laboratory to Philadelphia, then to Fort Wayne, Indiana, seeking investors and manufacturing partners. Philco Radio Company licensed some of his patents and manufactured television sets based on his technology. However, the revenue from patent licensing was insufficient to support continued research and legal battles with RCA. The Great Depression made raising capital nearly impossible, and World War II diverted resources to military production. In 1939, facing bankruptcy, Farnsworth was finally forced to accept a licensing agreement with RCA. The agreement required RCA to pay Farnsworth $1 million in patent royalties, the first time in its corporate history that RCA had paid for patents rather than acquiring them outright. However, most of Farnsworth's television patents would expire in the 1940s, giving him only a brief window to receive royalties. World War II halted civilian television production from 1942 to 1945, further reducing his patent income. By the time television broadcasting resumed after the war, his crucial patents had expired and RCA controlled the industry he had created. The post-war television boom made RCA and its leadership immensely wealthy, while Farnsworth received almost nothing. RCA manufactured millions of television sets, established television networks, and dominated broadcasting for decades. David Sarnoff became one of the most powerful media executives in America, celebrated as the father of television and broadcasting. Farnsworth watched from poverty as his invention transformed American culture while others profited from his genius. The historical narrative portrayed RCA and Zworykin as the inventors of television, systematically erasing Farnsworth from public memory. Farnsworth's later years were marked by depression, alcoholism, and declining health brought on by decades of stress and disappointment. He suffered a nervous breakdown in the 1940s and never fully recovered his mental equilibrium. He continued to work on various inventions including nuclear fusion research, but never achieved another breakthrough comparable to television. His battle with RCA had consumed his most productive years and left him financially and emotionally devastated. He died in 1971 at age 64, having witnessed television become universal while remaining virtually unknown to the public that used his invention daily. The technical genius Farnsworth demonstrated in inventing television at age 14 is almost incomprehensible. He mastered electromagnetic theory, vacuum tube technology, and image processing through self-education from magazine articles. He conceived a complete electronic television system that worked exactly as he predicted, solving problems that had stumped professional engineers. His image dissector and electronic scanning principles remain fundamental to modern video technology, including digital cameras and imaging systems. Every television, computer monitor, and video screen traces its lineage directly to the teenager plowing Idaho potato fields. The injustice of Farnsworth's treatment by RCA and the television industry represents one of the most egregious cases of corporate theft in technological history. A poor farm boy with genius-level intelligence created an invention that generated trillions of dollars in economic value. The corporations that controlled manufacturing and distribution systematically exploited his patents while denying him credit and adequate compensation. The historical record was deliberately falsified to erase his contributions and attribute television to corporate researchers. Future generations learned about television history without ever hearing the name of its actual inventor. Farnsworth's story began to be recovered in the 1970s and 80s as researchers investigated television history more carefully. His widow Elmer Farnsworth worked tirelessly to restore his reputation, providing documents and testimony about his inventions. Historical scholarship gradually recognized that Farnsworth, not RCA, had invented electronic television. In 2002, Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people of the 20th century. The statue of Farnsworth was placed in the United States Capitol representing Utah, belatedly acknowledging his contribution. Modern television technology has evolved far beyond Farnsworth's original image dissector tubes and cathode ray tubes. Flat panel displays, liquid crystal screens, and organic LED technology have replaced the bulky vacuum tubes he used. Digital television signals have replaced analog transmissions, and streaming video has supplemented traditional broadcasting. Yet every advance builds on the fundamental principle of electronic image scanning that the 14-year-old farm boy conceived in 1921. The multi-trillion-dollar television, video, and streaming industry exists because of his teenage insight. The cultural impact of television on 20th-century civilization cannot be overstated. Television transformed politics, entertainment, news distribution, advertising, and social behavior. It created shared cultural experiences and unified nations through simultaneous viewing of major events. It brought the world into living rooms, educating and entertaining billions of people. Philo Farnsworth created this communication revolution but was denied recognition and reward while others profited from his genius. Farnsworth's only satisfaction regarding television came near the end of his life during the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969. As he watched television images transmitted from the lunar surface, his wife Elmer asked if his invention had been worthwhile despite everything. He replied that if television could show humanity this achievement, then yes, it had been worth it. This moment of vindication came after decades of bitterness, providing brief recognition that his invention had contributed to humanity's greatest adventure. 2 years later he was dead, his health destroyed by the battles that had consumed his life. Today, billions of television screens, computer monitors, smartphone displays, and video devices operate on principles that Philo Farnsworth invented as a teenager. Every video call, streaming service, television broadcast, and digital image uses technology descended from his image dissector and electronic scanning system. The global television industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars annually, built entirely on foundations he established. Yet surveys show that fewer than 10% of people can name the inventor of television, while most credit RCA or various wrong answers. Philo Farnsworth's hidden genius conceived electronic television at 14 while plowing potato fields and built a working system at 21 without formal training or institutional support. Yet RCA and the television industry stole his invention through patent litigation, market control, and deliberate historical erasure. His story reveals how powerful corporations destroy individual inventors who lack resources to defend their intellectual property, and how historical narratives are manipulated to serve corporate interests rather than truth.